I'm Callista.
And I'm Teresa, and this is Terrifyingly Typical True Crime.
We're continuing our theme on when celebrity fandom turns to murder, and today we're talking about Christina Grimmie, a singer who had become famous after covering pop songs on her YouTube channel in her teens and becoming a finalist on the 2014 season of The Voice, who was murdered in 2016.
On June 10th, 2016, 22-year-old Christina Grimmie had just finished opening for the punk band Before You Exit in at an Orla- at an Orlando concert. The concert, which had started at 7:30 p.m., had about 300 attendees, and by the time Christina was doing her typical meet and greet at the back of the theater, around 120 people were still at the Plaza Live, waiting for the opportunity to meet Christina and purchase some merchandise by which to remember the experience. Unfortunately, this night would become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. At 10:24 that evening, about 30 minutes after the performance had ended, 27-year-old Kevin James Loibl stepped up to meet the singer. Kevin didn't say a word as he approached her, so Christina went to her go-to when dealing with a shy fan. She stretched out her arms for a hug. Christina had her arms open wide when Kevin reached for his gun and fired 3 bullets into her. Christina's brother and road manager, 23-year-old Marcus, who goes by Mark, had been sitting at the merchandise table watching Christina pose for photos and sign autographs for her fans.
Mark had watched Kevin come near Christina. He thought he looked much older than Christina's typical teenage fans, but Christina had never had a problem with anyone, so he followed her non judgmental lead. Then, Mark heard the sound of a gun firing and saw Christina crumple to the ground. He leapt up and grabbed Kevin. He brought him to the ground and managed to get Kevin's gun from him, tearing Kevin's shirt in the process.
Go, Big Brother Mark. How horrific to be the one to witness your sister get shot, but to have the wherewithal to immediately jump into action as opposed to run in the opposite direction.
Seriously, good on Mark. But Kevin managed to scramble out of Mark's hold. Kevin flattened himself against a wall and took out his second handgun. Instead of firing at anyone else, he turned it on himself, dying instantly from a bullet to the left side of his head.
One woman who was leaning against one of the theater walls thought the gunshots were just balloons popping, only realizing the truth when Kevin came near her and she saw the glint of the gun before he used it to take his own life. Another woman was slowly inching her way up the line to meet Christina. She was standing in line behind Kevin and thought he looked nervous as he kept moving his eyes and body around, but he looked like the rest of the fans. She was turned around talking to some of the people behind her when the sound of gunshots sent her and others running from the theater to safety. And it always kind of amazes me with our extremely weak gun laws and mass shootings occurring at a consistent and alarming rate that when most people hear gunshots, their immediate reaction is balloons popping, a car backfiring, or some other innocuous noise. I mean, maybe this is just our brains trying to protect us and to not freak out and fear the worst.
I think that's exactly what's going on. As cynical as I am, you never want to assume the worst is actually happening.
Yeah, that's true. Alexander Vogue Peterson was one of the security guards that night. When he heard gunshots that sounded like they were coming from the area surrounding the merchandise tables, he raced over and saw Mark grappling with a man in a red plaid shirt. The unknown man escaped Mark's hold, and Alexander was about to rush forward and subdue him when he noticed that he was holding a gun. After the man shot himself in the head, Alexander rushed to tell his supervisor, Jesse Raper, before dialing 911.
Alexander's supervisor and head of security, Jesse Raper, went into the Plaza Live after Alexander told him the senseless series of events that had just unfolded. The first thing Jesse saw was someone giving Christina CPR. This was 56-year-old Mark McDonough, the father of the three members of Before You Exit. He had been ushering fans backstage to meet his sons when he heard the gunshots. When he looked around the curtain, he saw two bodies. This father and doctor knew that Kevin, whose blood had spread from the merchandise table to the stage, was beyond saving. So he rushed over to the other body and recognized Christina's outfit. Christina was struggling to breathe, and the faint pulse Mark had initially found had faded away. So he began CPR, hoping against hope to save her life. Jesse did not have Mark's medical training and did not immediately know Kevin was dead. So he went over to him and checked for signs of life. Unable to find a pulse, he saw two handguns lying on the floor, one right by the man's body, and the other around 15 feet away. Jesse looked at all of the people still inside the venue and chose to eject the magazines and ensure no bullets were left inside either chamber before leaving both guns where he had discovered them. He would later tell police that the gun farthest away from Kevin had a misfeed malfunction, which meant Kevin wouldn't have been able to fire it.
Josh Call had been working outside the venue at a vegan hot dog stand.
And go you, my man.
Hear, hear. Josh heard the rapid succession of around 5 gunshots. When he went inside to help, only moments later, he was met with the horrifying sight of Christina and Kevin bleeding on the ground. With so many witnesses to the shooting, within a minute of Kevin having made his way to the front of the line, the Orlando Police Department had received numerous reports of the incident. When officers arrived at the scene, they too saw someone attempting to give Christina CPR. I guess this would be a positive to almost everyone having a cell phone.
There are some.
Yeah. Kevin was determined dead at the scene. He was half lying on the ground, half propped up against the wall. In addition to noting the gunshot wound to his head, police officers saw 6 9mm bullet casings scattered on the floor, one by Kevin's body and 5 beside the table holding merchandise. Both 9mm Glock handguns and the magazines Jesse ejected were near the dead man, wearing not a red plaid shirt, but a red, white, and blue shirt with long sleeves over a black t shirt. Secured to the inside of the back of his black jeans were 2 hidden nylon holsters. Between their position and Kevin's untucked shirts, both guns would have been completely obscured from view. Less hidden, though, were the 2 blue earplugs Kevin was wearing. I mean, he was obviously prepared. Don't want to hear those loud shots when you murder your target.
Yeah, you need to be comfortable as you commit murder. As for Christina, despite having taken a bullet to the head and 2 more to the chest, she was still alive when she first received on site treatment from the Orlando Fire Department. Sadly, though, she succumbed to her injuries soon after her arrival at Orlando Regional Medical Center and was pronounced dead at 10:59 p.m. And Kevin, whom Mark would go on to confirm as the man who first took Christina's life and then his own, well, the police soon learned of his obsession with Christina, how he religiously watched her videos online and told his colleagues of his plan to marry a woman he had never even met. Yet, as tragic as Christina's murder was, it was overshadowed by the Pulse nightclub shooting that took place only a couple of miles away from the Plaza Live a day later, during which the shooter went into the club and injured over 50 people and killed 49 others.
Only in America can one tragic shooting be outdone by yet another tragic shooting with a lot more victims.
And nothing is done to prevent the next one.
Hear, hear. To find out what led up to this specific calamity, let's go back to the beginning. Born in Evesham or Marlton, as apparently the names are interchangeable, New Jersey, on March 12, 1994, Christina started playing the piano and singing at a young age. Christina's parents, Tina and Albert, or Bud, Grimmie, had always encouraged Christina's precocious musical talent. Tina recalled how Christina sang before she spoke and how she encouraged her to sing in the bath. She wasn't content singing songs written by others for long, though, and when Christina was around 5 years old, she wrote her first song. I mean, 5 years old. Her impressed parents bought Christina her first keyboard at 10, and she went on to play both the piano and the flute. Mark, who had previously played drums, didn't pick up the guitar until Christina started playing acoustically. She would teach him everything she had been picking up in the hours she dedicated to her music. And it wasn't just her family who wanted to encourage Christina. In fact, the Grimmie's neighbor gave Christina the equipment she needed to start recording her own original songs around the age of 11. Yet, in spite of her talent, she never performed for her parents and waited until 12 to perform in front of an audience at her church, during which she made a minor mistake for which she continued to beat herself up throughout the rest of the song.
Oh, how I feel that.
No one is perfect. And go her writing her own songs at 11. I mean, the first one at 5, obviously. That's impressive.
Absolutely. Christina's Christianity not only played a role in her personal life, but it also inspired her professionally. For example, her favorite singer as a child, Stacey Orico, was a Christian artist. But even though she grew up in the church, Christina felt her relationship with God was personal and never tried to convert those around her.
Wow, if only every religious person had that attitude.
You do you, but I don't want to be saved. As we've already seen, the introverted soprano was hesitant at the spotlight at first. But with her brother's support, Christina's confidence grew. She had previously created a YouTube series with her friend Sarah, whom she'd known since kindergarten and who shared her goofy sense of humor. Taking inspiration from her experience when she was a kid using an old video camera to record herself for her make believe soap operas and comedy shows, they created the comedic series Above All That Is Random.
I love that.
It is cute.
And in 2009, Christina started her own YouTube channel with the username Zelda X Love 64 at the age of 15 because of her friend Lauren's encouragement. Not expecting much to come out of it, she posted her first video featuring her singing, of course, a Hannah Montana song, Don't Wanna Be Torn. Incredibly close with her family, her mom, Tina, originally was not in favor of her putting herself out there on YouTube. But her dad, Bud, seeing the many fan emails Christina was already receiving and the growing popularity of her cover of Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA, was determined not to stand in her way and brought Tina around. Entertainment Weekly even went on to dub Christina the veritable queen of YouTube musicians. And I can understand her mom's reluctance. Social media is scary, and the potential of creepy older dudes watching your teen daughter from their computer or TV screen, it's terrifying.
That it is.
Having reached 1 million followers in 2011, Find Me, her debut album, came out the same year and shot to the second spot on iTunes. Her brother and best friend Mark, who played guitar in some of her YouTube videos, while Christina played the piano and sang, was also all over her social media accounts. They were constantly inspiring and supporting each other, which is so sweet.
Their relationship really is one of unconditional support, which, as we know, is not the case with all siblings. Commenting on Christina's success, Mark said, I'm done being surprised by cool things she does. She's very talented and she's worked incredibly hard. It's a dangerous combination. Looking closer at that dangerous success, one of her early videos has now been watched more than 13 million times, and she went on to have 3.5 million YouTube subscribers and 947,000 Twitter followers.
Damn.
Right? Having been discovered on YouTube by the stepdad of former Disney Channel star and singer Selena Gomez, Christina opened for her on tour in 2011. Brian Teefy, Selena's stepfather, had reached out to Christina when she was 16. But Christina was already bombarded with messages and didn't see Brian's. Luckily, because Mark had made a cameo in her Miley Cyrus cover, Christina had shared his link. After Brian contacted Mark, he texted Christina while she was at school. Despite Christina being initially wary of a possible scam, and God knows scammers are everywhere, Brian went over to the Grimmies' house and talked about how he wanted to work with her. And Christina and Selena's relationship wasn't just professional. Selena was both her friend and mentor who encouraged and guided her, reminding her to stay true to herself.
I so love that.
I was a big fan of Wizards of Waverly Place, and it always makes me happy when an actor I admire turns out to be a decent person.
Which I really think Selena is.
Hmm.
Following her tour with Selena, Christina left New Jersey for Los Angeles in 2012 to chase her dreams as she finished high school. Tina was against making the move, but Mark thought it was the best thing for her career and was eager to live there himself. In spite of her mom's initial hesitance, Christina's entire family wholeheartedly believed in her and decided to do all they could to support her. At first, though, only Tina and Christina went to LA. Bud and Mark couldn't leave their jobs right away. But after a difficult year spent living apart, they had joined Tina and Christina in California. and the entire family came to love their new city, putting up with the traffic to take full advantage of the warmer weather. The family had been through a lot in the past. Tina was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in 1995 when Christina was only 1 and Mark was 2. Even though she experienced multiple relapses, several rounds of chemotherapy, and underwent heart surgery, Tina credited her miraculous recovery to God and felt humbled by Christina's talent. After Christina bought her mom a heart necklace for Mother's Day, one of Christina's friends purchased her a matching necklace that she wore to represent her close relationship with her mom. That's sweet. It really does seem that her mom had her best interest at heart, wanting to foster her talent, but also wary of people and situations that might put her at risk.
As most parents would be. Shortly after touring with Selena, Christina also sang on Ellen, had her single Advice on Radio Disney, went to the American Music Awards, and released her second album, With Love, in 2013, achieving all of these milestones before ever starring on The Voice. In spite of her success, Christina said, I hate when people have big egos. I have God, Jesus Christ, I'm Christian. I try to stay as grounded as I possibly can. And Christina credited her parents and brother with keeping her grounded. For Christina, her fans were everything, and her main goal with her music was to inspire them. She wanted to be a role model, and in that vein, always stayed true to herself, telling the UK tabloid The Daily Record, people tell you what you have to wear and do, and I've never been a fan of it.
Big kudos to her for staying true to herself and her beliefs.
Definitely. But like most of us, it had taken Christina time to become comfortable in her own skin, especially after a comment on one of her videos about her nose flaring as she sang. People are just petty. But once she did, she dedicated herself to helping others become proud of who they are.
Social media has really allowed trolls to hide behind their petty and rude comments. Jealous much?
You would have to have a small life if you had the time and energy to tear people down with meaningless comments.
Her confidence established in 2014, 19-year-old Christina went on season 6 of The Voice, a singing competition show on NBC where the judges are turned away from contestants. If one of the judges turns around while the performer is still singing, they're telling the contestants they want them on their team for the rest of the show. All 4 judges turned around for Christina as she sang Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. Even though Blake Shelton kept his eyes closed to savor Christina's voice, and Usher leapt up and threw both of his fists to the air to indicate his enthusiasm, Christina chose to go with Team Adam and began working with the lead singer of Maroon 5. And just saying, I too would have been on Team Adam.
And when we watched it, we were always rooting for Team Adam.
I mean, true, true. Although Christina finished third, which is still impressive, she had used her time on the show to gain even more fans and to get a label deal with Island Records, which she took after turning down offers from both Lil Wayne and Adam Levine. Her single, Must Be Love, came out shortly after, and this wasn't a short lived boost to her career because the following year she won Macy's iHeartRadio Rising Star contest, and Side A, her sophomore EP, was released in February 2016.
That same year, Christina and Mark traveled in a double decker bus with Before You Exit on a multi city tour. As a metal fan, Christina listened to bands like Metallica and Pantera before performing to channel the crowd's excitement before stepping on stage. After every show, Christina would take off her makeup, change into sweatpants, and get out her Nintendo DS.
She knew how to unwind.
Who even are you if you don't immediately change into comfy pants at the first opportunity? As they traveled from city to city, Mark was her road and co tour manager, as well as her brother. He was always looking out for Christina, asking her if she'd eaten breakfast, and playing the guitar for her as they traveled. While there was the occasional argument, the siblings were usually joking around. They were more than family. They were friends who had their love of video games permanently etched into their inner arms with matching Player 1 and Player 2 tattoos.
That's too cute.
It is kind of adorable. Because Christina was no stranger to the gaming world, Her YouTube username, ZeldaXLove64, proudly highlighted her obsession with Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda series, and she regularly shared tweets and YouTube videos related to the game.
This love of gaming was one reason that the concert at the Plaza Live was Christina's last before heading back to Los Angeles. Along with visiting her family, which included seeing her dog Chloe, she was heading back to put her coveted VIP tickets for the E3 Gaming Expo to use. She had no idea when she shared a video encouraging fans to come see the performance hours before it began that it would turn out to be her final one. After getting dressed in a black skirt, belly shirt, and high heeled boots, Christina and Mark went to a shopping center near the Plaza Live to grab a couple of slices of Tomasino's cheese pizza. Their pre show dinner consumed, at the venue, Mark set out shirts with Christina's face and the tour dates, posters with her name, and her newest album on the merchandise table before hooking up his red electric guitar and joining Christina as she covered One Dance by Drake for the cheering members of Team Grimmie. Many of the fans were teenage girls who sang along with Christina as she powered through her own songs of Liar Liar and Tell My Mama, then finished with Must Be Love.
After Before You Exit played for their hometown fans, which included the band members' previously mentioned supportive parents, Christina and the band went to meet those with backstage passes before Christina headed to the meet and greet. She happily spoke with one fan after the other, unaware that the shortening line was bringing her killer ever closer. After Kevin had shot Christina and himself, investigators discovered Kevin's driver's license while searching his pockets of the Plaza Live. They used it to identify him and discover his home address. It turned out that Kevin James Loibl had left his home in St. Petersburg, Florida, after affixing a handwritten note to his front door that read, spelling errors and all, deepest sorrow for lost to the family, friends, and fans of the very talented, loving Christina Grimmie. No other comments.
You don't get to write deepest sorrows, you asshat.
Two rights. Also in his pockets were a cell phone, wallet, and $15 ticket for the night's performance that he had printed out 5 days earlier. He also carried a room key belonging to the Courtyard by Marriott in Orlando. A tactical knife was secured to his left ankle with a cloth, and two more full 9mm magazines were found in a front pocket.
Was he planning on killing more than Christina? Why the knife and the additional magazines?
There's no clear answer, but I would guess that he just came over prepared. His target always seemed to be Christina and no one else at the venue.
His entire trip revolved around this single bloody mission. When shown a photo of Kevin, the front desk manager at the Courtyard by Marriott in Orlando immediately asked if he was the Plaza Live shooter, having already seen the story that had been dominating the news. Upon further questioning, the manager said that Kevin had checked in the day before the shooting and seemed strange. Kevin had shown up in a taxi around 1:30 p.m. on June 9th without a single suitcase and paid $269 for one night before the concert. When police went into Kevin's room, not only did they find no luggage, but there were no personal items at all. Even the bed was still made, leading them to suspect that Kevin had slept on the pulled up covers. More evidence of his less than lavish trip were the remains of $16 worth of items from the hotel snack bar in the trash that he had eaten alone in the room. While police were searching the room, the taxi driver Kevin had given $200 for a round trip had come to take him back to St. Petersburg.
That Kevin hadn't planned on sightseeing was more than obvious from the contents of the room's safe. In the safe beneath the TV, there were some unassuming toiletries and a Nike drawstring backpack, along with an empty Glock case with additional magazines and 9mm ammunition. With his lack of a criminal history, Kevin was able to buy the guns legally at two different St. Petersburg gun stores. At the first store, he purchased a Glock 26 9mm handgun, which he collected after the 5-day waiting period on May 31st. And at the second store, he then bought a Glock 19 9mm handgun that he picked up on June 7th after another 5-day waiting period. 3 days before killing Christina, he had legally obtained all the firearms he would use to commit murder. He stored them, along with a 5-inch hunting knife and 2 full magazines, in a drawstring bag.
I mean, a lot of good a 5 day waiting period does if every 5 days you can just buy another gun. But hey, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
I looked this up, and I think waiting periods can help prevent suicides and other acts of violence, but it seems like if there's nothing in someone's background check prohibiting them from owning a gun, there's not much else the dealer can do.
That's very true. If nothing comes up on the background check, there isn't really anything that can be done. I guess I was just thinking that someone can build an arsenal by purchasing gun after gun. On the day of the murder, Kevin went into the Old Navy store at the shopping center that housed the Plaza Live Theater 36 minutes before the performance began. Kevin bought water and a black baseball hat, which he donned as he left the store. It was perhaps this baseball cap, along with his spot alone at the back of the theater behind other dancing and singing fans, that ensured Mark didn't get a look at his face as Kevin watched the concert. He had walked into the plaza live with his weapons, and security allowed him through without even opening his bag. So, who was Kevin James Loibl and why did he do this?
Born on March 10th, 1989, Kevin Loibl had been living with his older brother, Chris Loibl, and father, Paul Loibl, at the house in St. Petersburg for years. Corey Dennington, described as Kevin's only friend in the world by himself and Kevin's father, recalled Kevin telling him about his mother, Nora Loibl, hitting Kevin with a frying pan, hurling dishes at him, and breaking his brother Chris's arm. Corey claimed that after Nora died from an accidental aspirin overdose in 2010, then 21-year-old Kevin said it was his fault because he told her to go ahead and kill herself. At that time, Kevin had spent 3 years at St. Petersburg College, but left only months before his mother died to devote more time to the multiplayer online role playing game World of Warcraft.
Besides in relation to his mother, the only other mention of Kevin's name in a police report is related to an incident in 2014 when the St. Petersburg police were called to the home for a domestic disturbance. In the 2 years his father, Paul, had been dating someone new, the police had come to the house 6 separate times because of violent arguments between Paul and his new partner that were fueled by alcohol. Paul even filed for 2 domestic violence injunctions against this woman. Despite these domestic violence injunctions, one of the many arguments was between Kevin and his father's girlfriend. Kevin said he tried to escape her drunken state by going to his room. Unaware she had come after him and put her hand out. When he went to slam the door, it caught her and injured her wrist. Even though she reached out to the police 10 days later to report Kevin, no arrest was ever made.
But not having been arrested didn't mean Kevin's behavior wasn't concerning. When Paul and Chris were told of Kevin's death, Paul told detectives that Kevin lived like a hermit and only came out of his room to work part time at Best Buy, a job his friend Corey had helped him get. However, Kevin had never spoken about harming himself or others or received a diagnosis for a mental illness. He had also never been the subject of an involuntary mental health evaluation. Although both Paul and Chris knew that Kevin spent most of his time in his bedroom on his computer, neither had ever heard him say anything about the voice or Christina Grimmie. Similarly, his father and brother didn't know he had bought a gun. In fact, neither had ever seen him hold one before. In spite of all the time he spent in there, Kevin's bedroom sanctuary was utilitarian. He slept on a thin mattress on the floor and had hung no decoration on the walls. There were, however, heavy curtains over windows that had aluminum foil attached to them to block out the light. Kevin's hatred of light, and same, I was photophobic for years due to migraines, was combined with an aversion to loud noises, which explained the blue earplugs he had been wearing at the Plaza Live. An identical pair was also found in one of his bedroom drawers.
Plugged into a computer tower with a missing side panel was a television that stood on Kevin's dresser. A flyer for a burial service that would scatter someone's remains on the base of a tree was lying next to the computer. Kevin had been carrying an identical advertisement on the day of the murder in his pocket. While nothing related to Christina was found in his bedroom, there were more magazines, ammunition, and another Glock case stored within a filing cabinet in Kevin's closet. Paul may have known nothing of Kevin's plans, but he had noticed changes in his son. Kevin had changed his appearance by getting hair plugs, losing 50 pounds on a vegan diet, and undergoing LASIK eye surgery. He had also just received his learner's permit. Paul saw his son for the last time on the afternoon of Thursday, June 9th, when Kevin left in a taxi without telling his father the reason for his trip. Even though he was initially unconcerned when Kevin hadn't come back by Friday afternoon, which was only hours before the murder, Paul phoned Best Buy and learned he had never shown up for his shift. Paul repeatedly tried to get a hold of his son, but Kevin never picked up the phone.
His family hadn't realized Kevin was infatuated with Christina, but Corey Dennington was more than able to help police put the puzzle pieces together. This infatuation was one that Kevin had never developed for any other girl, but his newfound interest was unstoppable once he saw Christina on YouTube in 2015. Kevin had made a habit of watching Christina's YouTube videos for hours per day, breaking up these long viewing sessions to stalk her on social media, which he managed to do without having any accounts of his own.
And I'm just going to reiterate why Christina's mom was concerned about her budding fame.
The internet, like the real world, can be a scary place. Corey, who had known Kevin for 15 years, realized he was obsessed with Christina over the last 6 months to a year. In spite of not being positive if Kevin had watched Christina on The Voice, Corey guessed that it was likely because Kevin had made it his mission to watch any content of Christina's.
However, it was only in the weeks leading up to the murder that Corey began to understand that Kevin's interest in Christina was far from normal. He confirmed that Kevin had made drastic changes to his appearance, adding that he also had gotten his teeth whitened, all to improve his chances of having a relationship with a woman he had never met. Beyond this, Corey remembered Kevin, who had previously been an atheist, telling him that Christina's Christianity had helped him to see the world in a different way because if there is a God, he has seen it in her. When Corey tried to make Kevin see sense by talking about the improbability of him dating Christina, his soulmate, Kevin would shut Corey down. He thought his plan to win Christina's love was foolproof and told Corey he'd stop being friends with him if he said anything to the contrary. What exactly that plan entailed beyond changing his appearance, Corey never found out. It sounds like Corey was trying to bring Kevin back to reality, but his delusional thinking was just too strong.
You can't really reach someone who's living in their own alternate reality. Despite these concerning signs, Corey knew Kevin had never met or tried to contact Christina and had no idea of Kevin's upcoming trip to go see her in Orlando. After all, Kevin had never tried to see her before. Even though Christina had previously put on a concert in Orlando on March 4th, 2016, the store's records confirmed that Kevin was at Best Buy that night. Corey, to his credit, had become worried enough that he told their boss of Kevin's infatuation in April 2016. But as his behavior wasn't affecting his work, no action was taken.
Nice.
Instead, colleagues of Kevin's who found out admitted to teasing him about his plans to marry Christina, his internet crush. Even though they believed he was joking, they did notice that he would become defensive whenever they pressed him about Christina. While there were rumors that someone had shown Kevin a picture of Christina with her producer, Stephen Reza, which had sent Kevin into a rage, none of his colleagues, including Corey, remembered this incident or Kevin threatening Christina.
In the 8 years Kevin had worked at Best Buy, he had gotten in the habit of mainly working on the weekends and making his commute to work on his bike. Having worked part time since he started and having been moved around numerous times because of his awkwardness, Kevin was currently part of the Geek Squad technical support team. As for the man who had been Kevin's boss for the last 12 months, Luke Dahl, he said that Kevin had been transferred to working on the Geek Squad a year and a half ago so that he could work in the back with computers rather than customers, given his poor social skills. After Corey came to him about Kevin's unhealthy obsession with Christina in April 2016 and said his friendship with Kevin was even falling apart because of it, Luke never talked with Kevin about it, but observed him watching her YouTube videos at work.
On the one hand, I don't think talking to him about it would have done anything, and I can't imagine there's a policy in place for supervisors in that situation. But on the other hand, I feel like he at least should have asked HR how to handle it rather than ignoring the issue.
It's a good point, but there isn't going to be HR at each individual store, and I wonder how helpful corporate HR would have been. I feel like in so many true crime cases, people knew something was off about someone, but our system is reactive, not proactive. And from his boss's standpoint, I mean, his work wasn't suffering.
Those are really good points.
Everyone on the Geek Squad team knew about Kevin's crush, but didn't see it as particularly alarming. In one regard, Kevin was similar to Christina because he was also an introverted gamer, and one of his fellow Geek Squad's team members said that Kevin had claimed he had been playing online games with Christina, but no one could verify this. They noticed the changes in his appearance, but didn't think Kevin started acting any different.
To be fair, though, not even Corey had more than a work friendship with Kevin. So even if Kevin's behavior had changed, it's not too far fetched to assume that none of them would have noticed, especially if Kevin, like most of us, presented a different version of himself at work than he did at home.
Some believe that Kevin had the dangerously common mentality of, if I can't have her, no one can, and became enraged enough to act on his distorted beliefs after seeing Christina's social media post about having a boyfriend, which is just so freaking scary.
It takes so little to set some people off. As for Corey, even when he found out about Christina's murder, his mind immediately turned to how devastated Kevin would be, not that he was the likely perpetrator. His last interaction with Kevin was on June 5th, 5 days before the murder, when they were working a shift at Best Buy. Looking back on it now, Corey remembered that he said several odd things, like when he gave Corey back the science magazines he had lent him months earlier and told him he loved him. Most chillingly, Kevin had said he was tired and ready to ascend. And despite not mentioning harming himself or others with firearms or any other weapons, it's hard not to see that comment in hindsight as an acknowledgement of his plan to kill Christina and himself.
I'm not sure how else that could be interpreted.
But when it came to finding incontrovertible evidence of Kevin's motive, police found nothing concerning on Christina's phone. Not a single call from Kevin or any attempt at contact made by him. Not even a cryptic voicemail offering insight into his state of mind right before the murder. Kevin's phone also offered no answers because what it contains remains a mystery. When police attempted to get data from it, they discovered it was encrypted. His computer also didn't work, and the hard drive had been demolished.
Don't they have specialists like in police departments to unencrypt phones?
I thought the same thing, but I didn't see anything about that.
Maybe not. What was more than evident, though, was the Grimmie's devastation and disbelief following Christina's murder. As Mark sat stunned on the floor beside the two bodies on June 10th, he felt as if he were in a nightmare. When Bud called to check in on him and Christina, though, Mark realized it was on him to inform their father of the tragedy, dragging the rest of his family into the darkness with him. When police spoke to Mark and Bud Grimmie upon his arrival in Orlando, neither recognized Kevin's name or photo. Mark told them he hadn't seen Kevin at any of the shows they had done throughout their multi city tour and couldn't even recall seeing him during the performance. Like Mark, Bud couldn't remember Christina ever encountering an aggressive fan or threat. Christina's autopsy was carried out the day after her death and offered no new answers for the family. The entrance wound of the gunshot to the side of Christina's head had stippling around it, confirming that Kevin had fired it while standing close to her, while Christina also had taken 3 bullets to the torso and died as a result of the numerous gunshots. The head wound alone would have been fatal. Kevin's autopsy also offered no surprise as it confirmed that he had died by suicide from a bullet to the head.
After looking at all the evidence, it was decided that if Kevin had still been alive, he would have been charged with first degree murder. But due to his death, the case was simply closed. After word of Christina's murder got out, those she had worked with made their feelings of grief known on social media. Adam Levine released a statement that expressed his and his wife's devastation over Christina's murder, saying, Christina was a natural, a gifted talent that comes along so rarely. She was taken from us too soon. Other coaches from The Voice also expressed their feelings on Twitter. Country singer Blake Shelton voiced his feelings of disgust and heartbreak, and pop singer Christina Aguilera said her heart went out to Christina's friends, family, and fans. Carson Daly, who hosts The Voice, said of Christina, "She had an infectious laugh. She was determined, she was confident, but she was so incredibly sweet. You would never forget meeting her."
And those who had met her certainly hadn't forgotten her. Selena Gomez posted a picture of her and Christina captioning it, "My heart is absolutely broken. I miss you, Christina." Brian Tiffy, Selena's stepfather and Christina's manager, said, "All I wanted to do was assist her in achieving her musical dreams while protecting her from the pitfalls associated with the business. I never could have imagined this horrific event being one of the pitfalls needing to be avoided." Before You Exit, the band Christina was opening for released a statement that said, "Christina was such a loving, caring, beautiful person with the biggest heart. She was an absolutely incredible musician and an even better friend." Performances made in dedication to Christina by singers such as Justin Bieber, whom she had previously covered on YouTube, abounded in the weeks after her death. Many also came out against yet another instance of gun violence and to voice their support for Mark's bravery in tackling Kevin after Christina had been shot.
A vigil was held for Christina 3 days after the murder on the evening of June 13th, 2016, back in Evesham, New Jersey, at the Marlton Memorial Sports Complex. Among the hundreds of mourners made up of fans, family, and friends, Christina's brother Mark remembered his little sister by saying, "Christina was awesome. She loved this town, she loved this state, she loved singing, she loved the Lord, and she loved me." In the days after her death, Adam Levine had called Christina's mother to say he would pay for Christina's body to be flown back to New Jersey and for the funeral itself. The GoFundMe page her management set up for donations also reached $100,000 within that short time frame. After Christina's private funeral in New Jersey on the evening of June 16th, a public memorial took place the next day at the Fellowship Alliance Chapel in Medford, New Jersey, which her pastor, family, friends, and fans attended. As photos of Christina were shown inside the chapel, recordings of her songs were played for the crowd of hundreds outside.
Christina's parents, Tina and Bud Grimmie, waited until other relatives had publicly remembered her to tearfully take their turn to speak to the crowded church. Bud said, "I want to share what I've shared with several people here, and that's there's this gigantic hole in my heart that I know is never going to go away." A little less than a year later, in April 2017, Christina's family founded the Christina Grimmie Foundation as a way to help other people affected by gun violence. Since its creation, more than $420,000 has been used to help families affected by gun violence with housing, food, medical expenses, and other essentials. I just have to say, I love when families of victims turn their immense grief into something positive.
It's so commendable because no one could blame them if instead they never got out of bed again.
When her family released the last single Christina recorded, Invisible, later that year, they gave all the proceeds to the new charity. Mark and Christina's producer, Stephen Reza, had artist Ryan Brown duet with Christina's tracks to complete her formerly unfinished single, Rule the World, which came out in March 2022, as a way to continue her legacy.
Similar to Vinnie Paul Abbott in our last episode on Daryl Abbott, Christina's family also brought a lawsuit against the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra Plaza Foundation, the owner of the Plaza Live, as well as against the entertainment group AEG Live and the security company there that night for negligent infliction of emotional distress and wrongful death on December 20th, 2016. The lawsuit claimed that they failed to have the theater's unarmed security, who apparently wore a uniform of polo shirts, check attendees for weapons via metal detectors or pat down searches. Instead, they only conducted superficial bag checks as people came in. I mean, evidently, since no one bothered to look inside Kevin's. One attendee stated that security did check the inside of her bag, but only for food and drinks, not weapons, in spite of the venue's sign that said firearms were prohibited.
I mean, the sign is what's going to do it. I think security was liable, and heaven forbid somebody bring in a Twix bar and a bottle of water. Do your damn job.
Seriously, let's have security prioritize people's safety over the venue's profit.
Even though the Plaza Live had stricter security for previous events, those same standards were not applied on June 10th, 2016. The suit considered that, at the time, over 40% of households in Florida had one or more firearms, and that the general manager, who had worked at the venue for the past 6 years, was fired only 9 days before, meaning the current general manager had only been on the job for a week. The family sought compensation for Christina's future income after taxes, given an average life expectancy, medical and funeral costs, and the financial support Christina would have offered them. Tina and Bud also sought compensation for the mental anguish that followed Christina's murder, whereas Marcus requested damages for the related emotional and physical suffering. And maybe it's just me, but should the parents be compensated for future earnings they would glean from their daughter? I don't like that.
It doesn't feel great, but maybe they had a better chance of getting compensation if they added that on top of the trauma they suffered.
That's probably true. And it's probably a lawyer advising them do this, this, and this. And then maybe, you'll get one of the six things, I suppose. I just don't like the idea of it, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah.
For its part, the venue released a statement that read, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those lost, as well as those that witnessed and aided in the recovery after this senseless act." Again, with the freaking thoughts and prayers.
Well, they require a lot less effort than actions.
Future events, such as a Kids Bop concert, were also suspended for a time.
Kids Bop. That brings me back to listening
Uh,
to their albums in the car on the way to elementary school. Kudos to you for managing to sit through them.
some were definitely better than others. I don't think I minded their version of Avril Lavigne's Complicated.
Although I'm sure the original was less annoying.
I mean, of course, though, I have to say, when you mentioned Kids Bop and On the Way to School, what it made me think of is we also, for a really long period of time, listened to Sheryl Crow's Soak Up the Sun. So, it was a balance.
I still know all the lyrics to that. It's a banger. The Grimmie family asked for a jury trial, but in 2019 the case was dismissed. It has been reported that the Plaza Live did install metal detectors at the entrance and a surveillance camera outside following Christina's death.
And that's great. But why? Why does it take a tragedy for businesses to do the right thing? I'm sure metal detectors aren't cheap, but add that to the cost either for performers or concert goers to pay. If you are going to have an armed society, you need to make an effort to keep people safe.
That does seem like the right course of action, but why would a company spend money until they're forced to do so? Profit over people.
That's so angrily accurate.
Given her love of gaming, many of Christina's fans banded together to create two petitions asking Nintendo to honor Christina by naming an elf in a future Legend of Zelda game after her. Despite 75,263 signatures having been collected in total for both petitions, Nintendo chose not to grant the fans' request.
Which I think is lame on their part. Imagine the goodwill that simple act would have garnered. Even for gamers that didn't know who Christina was, it would have been a nice gesture.
It is lame. Maybe they didn't want to set that precedent, but like you said, wouldn't taking fan feedback only increase sales? But fans still have pieces of Christina by which to remember her because her father and brother continue to share videos and photos of Christina on her Instagram account to keep the childhood dream she had of singing alive. Mark said, "I feel very blessed because tragedies happen every day and people are left with nothing. Christina left behind videos, pictures, records. So we have so much to hold on to. And it helps us cope because it feels like she's still here with us." Which is an admirable way of dealing with a tragedy, I think.
I think so too. Christina had never stopped posting videos. Even when she was competing on The Voice, she had continued sharing videos on YouTube to maintain that direct connection with her fans. And let's talk about YouTube stars specifically for a minute. More so than a TV show or concert, those who go on YouTube feel closer to the creators. In fact, YouTube creators are meant to foster that personal connection, such as by speaking directly to fans and mentioning them in their videos. YouTube viewers rely on their favorite creators to improve their mood. According to an ISPOS Connect survey, 47% of those who identify as millennials say that watching a YouTube video makes them feel better.
After Christina's death, that connection has continued to prove problematic. In February 2018, a fan of YouTube creator Logan Paul, Taj DeAndre Spate, age 20, broke into Logan Paul's house in California's San Fernando Valley. Logan and his father came home to find Taj asleep on his couch. Taj had even been charging his phone as he waited to meet Logan. Luckily, no one was hurt, as police were called after Logan's father apprehended Taj. Logan, for his part, captured the incident and shared it on his YouTube channel. To me, the fact that Taj was charging his phone and taking a nap indicates that he didn't think he had done anything wrong, that he did have a personal connection with Logan, which of course he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, he literally made himself at home.
Exactly.
With YouTube creators crediting fans for their success, viewers feel like they're part of the creators' careers. And when YouTubers share posts about their daily lives, fans are able to figure out their locations in an effort to see them IRL, which is scary AF.
Uh-huh.
Despite the ongoing incidents, Christina's murder caused many YouTube creators to take a second look at their security. Not only did they hire more people to keep them safe, but online video festivals like VidCon also decided to revamp their security following her death in 2016. Again, sad that there needs to be a tragedy for organizers to take security more seriously.
Too true. While I think that YouTube may have made Kevin feel closer to Christina than he would have if he only watched on The Voice, given his obsession and behavior leading up to the murder, I would hazard a guess that Kevin wasn't A OK. So I think Kevin, not YouTube, was the real problem.
Agreed. She had millions of views on her channel, but only Kevin planned and carried out her murder.
100%. Talking about Kevin's mindset, let's briefly touch on parasocial relationships, or one sided relationships between fans and celebrities. In 2006, Dr. David Giles and Dr. John Maltby identified three levels of parasocial relationships. We already discussed the stages of celebrity worship in our eighth episode on Rebecca Schaefer, but let's look through the lens of parasocial relationships to understand Kevin's line of thinking.
The first is the entertainment social stage, where fans feel a distant attraction to a celebrity that helps them connect with others in real life who also appreciate that celebrity's talents. The second stage is intense personal, where fans become obsessed with and idolize a celebrity, often thinking of them, like Kevin did, as their soulmate. The third and final level is borderline pathological, where fans become delusional and thinking that they now actually have a two-way relationship with a celebrity, like with Kevin claiming he had been playing online games with Christina as if she also connected to him. Even though the second level is slightly problematic, the fan still realizes that they are the only one with those feelings. But once they reach that third level, they bypass reality and become convinced the celebrity feels the same way.
And quick side note here, as seen with the first level, obviously all parasocial relationships aren't problematic. We were all teenagers with harmless celebrity crushes at one point in time, bonding with our friends about how much we wish we could meet our idol, and not plotting to commit their murder to tie ourselves to them. No one can know what Kevin was thinking right before the murder suicide, but given his comment about being ready to ascend, his newfound Christianity, and his long-time obsession with Christina, I'm of the opinion that he killed her and then himself in the belief that they would be together in the afterlife. It's possible that even if he didn't see a photo of Christina with her producer, he somehow realized that they would never be together, and in that case, neither of them could go on living. because how unbearable to live a life without your quote unquote soulmate. I believe he was genuinely convinced he had a personal connection to Christina, and I have no doubt that he was on the borderline pathological level. But what do you think?
I agree with you. I don't think Kevin planned to kill Christina for fame, like Robert John Bardo, who killed Rebecca Schaefer, or Mark David Chapman, who we will talk about in our next episode, who killed John Lennon. Both of those individuals wanted fame along with becoming upset about something their celebrity obsession did. But with Kevin, I think on some level, he knew that he and Christina would not be together in real life, but thought they could in the afterlife if he killed them both.
Which is as tragic as it is terrifying. Okay, everyone, that's where we're going to leave it today. Next week, we'll be continuing our series on when celebrity fandom turns to murder with the case of John Lennon.
All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case or theme for us to discuss, feel free to email us at terrifyinglytypicalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at Typical Podcast on Instagram and at terrifyinglytypicalpod on TikTok. Leave us a comment below to let us know what you thought of the case. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you next week.